She is indeed. Yes, she is.
Yes. She's the poobah. Cece's the grand producer.
The grand poobah, yes.
The grand poobah. Hi, Barry. This is GoingSoloMedia.com, WGSN-DB, Going Solo Network Radio, TV and podcast #1 Internet Singles Talk Radio. Aren't we excited to be part of it? Lucky us, huh?
Well, the thing is, I was going to say is that I didn't do quite a good job last week when you weren't here that you did. So I'm grateful you're back.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It was lovely that you could take over, and your guest host was so interesting. And I'm glad that you had such a good time, and it was a really interesting subject.
Yeah, I was grateful because she, as I mentioned in the talk, I was on her podcast. So that's how we met through Clubhouse, and it was so much fun to do a live talk again. So I'm glad she said yes. That was perfect.
I know, it was really nice. Thank you, since I needed to be away for a very sad funeral, and it was unavoidable. So thank you for having her help fill in.
Absolutely.
So today on Let's Talk About Dating, we're going to talk about when they should call and why they don't.
Oh, yes.
It's something I hear most often from women. And since your clientele is mostly all women, you hear it from women too. And it's certainly not that I don't hear it from men. It just doesn't seem to come up as often. But we can certainly talk about what it's felt like for you, if it's happened to you, and what it feels like for me as a woman, and all the complaints I hear from my female clients and the people that write to me. It is probably the top 3 complaints I hear from women. Why don't they call? When they really believe they should call. And you know what I've done? I've told you this, I've done this a few times when I have a meetup that I do on Mondays for singles on Zoom. So I use the same subject. And it was kind of fun because what I did is I had the women say how it makes them feel. And I had the men say why they don't. So that was kind of fun.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was really fun. And but before I had the men talk, I said, and remember, the reason we have all these great male faces as part of our Zoom call every week for over a year is because they feel really safe, and there's no gender of any sort bashing here on my Zoom. So whatever they say is really their opinion, and we're going to all sit here and learn. And I watched the women's faces, but they didn't say anything negative. I was very proud of them.
I mean, that's the thing, is really having that level of respect set up there and honored by them is wonderful. So I'm glad that your meetup crew gets it well. That's wonderful.
I'm really grateful for it. And it is one of the really unusual things that typically, as we've experienced as people that have in our lives been single a lot, when you go to a singles event in person, especially, there's 30 women to every 1 man, typically. And what I find in my meetup is sometimes it's 50-50. It's really close to 50-50 almost every week, which is so unusual for a singles event. But I think it's because they continue to tell me that they feel honored and safe, and they learn, because the women are very candid. So they learn what women will honestly say, because I think that's part of the big challenge in the male-female thing, is that often we women don't say what's really on our minds. We don't say what's really bothering us. We beat around the bush, or we don't want to upset somebody, or we're not really clear about how we feel. And I think that could be part of the reason that a man wouldn't call, because a number of the men talked about they weren't sure if the woman was interested.
Right.
And I could imagine you could speak to that from a male point of view.
I mean, I'm just thinking about this title. I'm going, do we have 4 hours to talk about this?
I know. Oh, I felt the same way.
So let me let me preface it by something, which is the thing. I mean, just to be clear, this device is a phone. But the number of people who don't use it for calling in life, period, it's an app device, or it's a messaging device. And it's so interesting, because, and it's funny, so I was in a conversation with somebody recently about this. Today I was talking to somebody who should say we were using the iMessage, which is a texting app, to send voice memos back and forward. How confusing is it? It's just like using a phone that is an audio device to do text messages, and you put audio on top of that. It just sounds so weird. So first of all, let's just clarify. The thing is that phone we're talking about. Well, I'm break it down because I want to be able to speak to the communication piece and to calling, because those are two different things. So there's definitely the integrity honor thing about after a date, text one another to say, nice time, let's get to it again. That's one piece. The phone call piece, which we're going to talk about much more in this conversation. I'm already thinking about ghosting, submarining, boomeranging, all the other different components of people who don't.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, God. What's the other one? There was wasn't wallflower? Was it wallflower? No. There's so many terms that got brought up through social media about what you're being treated like afterwards. Mm-hmm. So to cut to the chase, the idea of phone calls being made or not being made. First of all, and this is the thing that sounds so simplistic but so hard to get, is it's never about you, it's about the other person. Mm-hmm. Let's be clear about that. Which first of all is going to go, but it's like because that's the expectation we run. Mm-hmm. It's that we have this thing about, well, they should have called me, therefore I'm going to get upset with them for not calling me. You don't know what's going on, first of all. And secondly, if they ghosted you or went away or hid away, that's their limited perspective, so to speak, not nothing to do with you. So we'll talk about this later on the show about how you take care of yourself when that happens, because that's going to be a key part as well. But the thing for men, and that's me for myself, is when I don't hear back from a woman who I was going out with, it is disheartening. I mean, just to be transparent, I'm not saying I'm immune to this, but I feel being kind of let down. But I know, yes, I know, I'm just going to double check if that's true or not. If I knew this, I know from my female clients that when a man doesn't call, it's much more emotionally challenging than it is for a man when she doesn't call him. Mm-hmm. There's more disappointment, feeling let down. And maybe if we had a sense of like possibility happening that our dreams got dashed, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. We were making future plans.
Right. But it's not an emotional roller coaster that we women go through. I know that. That's clear. And that's also because of our difference in gender. Mm-hmm. So that's one piece of it. Now, question, did I answer your question? I can't remember if I did or not.
That's a pretty good answer, though. I liked your answer a lot.
Thank you. I just like it, but I'm going to make sure I came back. Did I answer your question? Let me know. Or that's what I said.
Well, and you made, as always, so many good points about certainly the big difference of more often, women, we get in our feelings. We just have so many feelings about pretty much everything. And then if we're on the Myers-Briggs thing that we're the feeling more than the thinking person, it's even harder for us to not get so caught up in our emotions that we don't bring our intellect along to say, is this really the truth? Is this really helpful to think this way? Especially if you don't really know the person very well, because we all think somebody should call us or reach out somehow after a date to say, hopefully, you had a good time? And if you didn't have a good time, at least say you didn't have a good time, or that it isn't a connection, or something came up in your life and you decided you really can't date. And it's difficult when you're left hanging. So the should part, sure, it's polite. It's very polite to touch base with somebody the next day or the day after you've had it, if you went out with them, to say, gosh, thanks, it was nice meeting you. And do I want to see you again or no?
Right.
And the thing that happened a lot on Monday night was, and this is when the women made a lot of faces, that if they've only met you once and they didn't feel a connection, over half of them did not feel that it was necessary or mandatory to say anything.
I know, I saw that coming.
Yeah, you could at my setup. And the women were good, though. They didn't say anything because it's important to know this. And these are good guys. They're smart. They're very considerate on the video every Monday. I mean, they could be assholes other times, and I don't know. I've only experienced them as being very polite. I mean, we have a thing where you can raise your hand. They don't interrupt. I mean, they're great guys. And yet in their world, it felt like that to them. And the other big thing they said that I know you're so going to relate to as a guy, why do you want to say something to a woman that's going to upset her? Why? Why would they want to do that? They just see no point in that. Oh, there were more faces with that too.
Yeah, there's no winning. It's like if you don't call, you're going to get upset. If I do call, you'll be more upset.
Yes.
I'll take the lesser of the two evils.
Yes, they said that out loud, and it made so much sense to me. I had lots of compassion about that. I had compassion for the women because I've certainly had somebody not call, and I have compassion for them. Of you, high priority to men is to not upset us, whether you're in a relationship or not. You really don't want to upset us. It's a big thing to you. So if you go, well, if I tell her I wasn't into her, I don't think that's going to make her feel great. So I'm not sure I'm going to tell her that. And enough men have experienced where we women will argue with you. We will explain to you how your feelings are wrong. And we're going to figure out how to have you change your mind.
It's true. I mean, it is so much in the wiring. It's like there's a feeling that we know if we reach out to say something, it opens a door to something we don't want to necessarily open the conversation to. So that's another reason why we think it's safe not to do anything, because at least we're not going to fall into that argument where we know we're going to lose.
Yes. Oh, it's lose-lose.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I can remember one guy I had a whole thing about, well, why? Well, I don't understand why. Well, what is it exactly? And it was so unsatisfying. I really thought it was going to as long as I kept talking, and there was a little voice going, shut up. But I did not listen. But I only did this once, and it was hard on both of us. And he gave me very honest answers. He was so nice about it, and he kept talking to me, and I never felt better. And I just knew I was going to feel better, which is why I never did it again, because it didn't make me feel better.
That right there is a key.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about, and the true thing about this completion stuff is that having a conversation with somebody else for completion is not a guarantee. It's a hit or miss.
No.
And in the context you're saying, it's like the fact you wanted to speak to him to get in to give you the answer that makes you feel complete, which he will never give you because it will never feel complete, is impossible.
I know. I'm really impressed. I learned it after once, but it was so painful.
Yeah.
Because he put up with me asking him for quite a while. I mean, he just sat there and answered until I finally ran out and realized, if anything, I was making it worse.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. But I was being such a girl. I just knew if I asked the right question, he would give me the right answer, and I'd either change his mind, which was really my goal, which didn't happen, or I would finally understand enough that I go, oh, okay, I get that. It never happened, Barry. Not even a tiny bit.
I know. It never will.
No. So I really learned my lesson.
But also, that's again, like you said about the audience you had in the meetup group, is the men and women respond differently and have different perspectives. So that communication you have with this guy would never meet because you're going to keep talking at different, levels.
Yes.
So there's never going to be any benefit. And that's the challenge of this conversation we're talking about, is the reality is that this whole dating conversation is such an uneven place to play. And the communication we have with each other is almost like, and it's funny, I remember this back from my psychology background, we had one of our advanced skills we learned. It was called perception checking. Where basically when you listen to somebody else talk back, as you're saying, you're talking to him and you never got the answer you wanted. It's almost like, but if let me use other people, not us. It's
Thanks.
But if she is asking him to get an answer she doesn't get, has she at least perception checked that what he said was accurate? Like, because maybe he said something, and then if she says it the way she thinks she heard it, he might go, oh, now I see you didn't get what I meant.
Yeah.
Or it might be just going, yes, exactly what I meant. But having the ability to perception check, because that way you're not making anybody wrong. No. You're also not making any assumptions about what you heard or didn't hear. But that shift, I mean, this is a deep psychological skill, but it's so simple because the things we forget to do it. But in our conversations, in our communications, whether it is by phone, by text, or in person, to perception check, to check what you heard is what the person said. That way the message did reach you that was sent, is something we don't do enough.
No.
So that would help.
It's so grown up.
I know.
I remember when I really think back, because it was such a pivotal point that I went, I'm going to figure out how to not do it that way ever again.
Mm-hmm.
I really felt 12. I really can tell you, I felt very 12. But oh my God, I'm going to get this answer. And I can't even engage my brain. It's just my feelings taking over. I mean, really, I felt like there was another Christine person sitting over there going, what are you doing? I really remember that. It was such a pivotal point in my life, and it was such a long time ago. Oh my gosh. The feelings in my body were so intense, and so for the 12-year-old, it felt like life and death.
Yeah.
I'm just going to die if I don't get this answer, which is how 12-year-olds feel. Mm-hmm. You know, everything's a big deal to people that are 12. And so if you realize, oh, I think I'm being 12, then of course it feels like you're going to die, which is a horrible way to put the other person dying or not. Oh my God.
but please, just to think about it for a second, because I wonder, thinking about it, if this is a global thing, that anybody who's in this sort of discomfort on disorderly or this discord of miscommunication, is it when you recognize that where you're receiving it from is a juvenile part of ourselves, then you start to realize just how immature our own relationship skills are.
Yes.
And that could be a whole other topic right there. But the recognition, but that's the thing is, I think for a lot of us, because a lot of us have had dating on and off over years, not like consistently, is we almost have a regression to a younger age that is looking for something we're never going to get. And it may tie into childhood patterns. I know with my clients, a lot of times I'm working with them to heal their patterns with their dad or with their mom or something when they were a child. But this level of having this younger self come forward to like take over the conversation without permission.
No.
And you're wondering why it doesn't work out?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to put a 12-year-old in charge of your mouth when you're in a conversation with somebody else who's an adult in your romantic relationship. Not a good idea.
No. I tell people it's like putting a 12-year-old in the driver's seat of your heart and your emotions. I mean, you really don't want to do that. And so this interesting pivot that happened in my head that I really did a lot of thinking about after, of why did that happen and why did I feel that way and how do I not do that again? I went, oh, I need to approach this from my adult intellectual place and not from this 12-year-old emotional place. And what I find, because since when I became widowed, all these widowed people now started asking me to help them with coaching. It is a really big challenge for them for their dating, because a lot of them who've been married for 30, 40, 50 years met when they were teenagers.
Right.
So they haven't dated since they were teenagers. Their maturity level for dating is very immature, and they don't know how to be anything else. So they automatically revert back to that because it's all they know. And oh my gosh, you cannot date as a teenager inside of you, because we didn't make very good decisions when we were teenagers in our first parts of dating. I mean, some of these people made really good decisions to have a lifelong partner finally, but it certainly isn't going to work nowadays. Dating is very different. There are some different rules, different ways of approaching people. And even if you're talking to somebody who's pretty grown up on the other side, if you're approaching them from this really immature place, you're going to have this miscommunication too, besides the whole male-female thing. Now you're having age group inside stuff, which I have found is really a problem.
Oh boy.
Now we just added another 4 hours, right?
Yeah. Okay. It's like I'll clear my calendar. To speak to that though, a couple of things. One of them is, first let me pre-qualify something as well. Is we're not talking about the emotions are only available as a 12-year-old, because that's the thing. I know we're resorting to that because we do have it. You can have adult emotions too. It's okay. And men and women do have emotional expression. So I want to put that on the table first, just so we don't like go into too many of like, oh, it's only for this, only for that. that recognition, though, of having, and I've had some clients too who've been married and got divorced over 20, 30 years, who got married very young, who are now looking like, how do I date now? How does this work now? And with the technology change we've had in the last 15 years with smartphones, we are dealing with a quantum leap in how we communicate that most people who didn't do dating less than 20 years ago have no clue about.
No.
So understandably, it's going to be confusing. So not only that part, but then it's like, well, then afterwards, the text phone call they should or shouldn't get, or when they get it, it's a huge challenge. That's why this topic is so relevant for many people. And the thing I'm very aware of is that, and it's funny, I was in a clubhouse room this morning talking about this, about, we don't get relationship skills taught in schools.
No. So
as adults, we're basically flying blind based on what we think we know by our parents or the adults around us who apparently are doing it better than we were, we think. And then, I'm just saying, we think. And then we wonder why we have problems in our dating life. And then, so because we don't have the skills trained. And then add on top of that, someone who's been married for 25, 30 years, who's suddenly now in the dating pool, and they have a smartphone, which they didn't use for this before, and suddenly they're using dating apps. It's like being a kid again, because you don't have the maturity of experience with that, which is so challenging.
Yes.
And so that's just another piece of the puzzle. But I want to speak to one of those pieces that came up I want to speak to, is that there was something about the emotional piece that was such a big piece I was going to talk to, and it just went out of my head. It'll come back.
Okay. I hate when that happens. The part of the challenge too that you brought up with our technology is we all think we should hear from somebody immediately, we should respond immediately. And I'm like, people have lives. I mean, even if they are going to write to you, they have a life. Wait. It's okay to wait. It's okay to be patient. I hope you have a life so that you have something distracting you from every second going, did they call? Because that's part of, and then the angst goes up, and the desperate and the upsetness with them.
Neediness.
Yes. Oh boy, does that just plug right into our neediness when they haven't called yet.
Yeah.
How long do I have to wait? Well, how long has it been? 2 hours. Ratchet it back a little, hon.
And that I was listening to, it was an audiobook? No, it was a podcast. I've been listening to so much stuff and taking so much stuff in, because I'm always like learning and getting more information about this is actually from the book Attached, which is a fascinating book about attachment styles.
Such a
although it isn't complete, I've already found holes in it for myself because the work I've done over the last bunch of years. But one thing it talked about was, in that communication piece, is that there was a paradigm between it was an anxious and it was anxious, and then the strong one was I just like my head. It's anxious, avoidant, and the main one, which is the one that is solid. I forgot the term. It'll come back to me anyway. So the one person is anxious, the other one's the solid one. And the problem is the anxious one needs to be reassured, because the anxious one's always like looking to be confirmed, being okay, being all right. And it was disruptive to the other person, because the other person was like, enough already. They're in a relationship already. This is the thing, it's an existing relationship. But what we figured out what was working was that what the person who was the other one, who was solid, the time will come back to me in a minute, would basically have because the person was at work all the time, and the avoidant one was always like, not the avoidant, but the attached, the one that was more needy would keep coming out, and it was getting away with his work. And so what they figured out best thing to do is that he would have a canned text, a predefined text that he would respond once a day, and she'd be okay the rest of the day. Like all she needed was to know that he thought of her. It didn't be a long text, a long phone call, just a quick text to say, I'm thinking of you, and that would get her through the day. But it was that simpler gesture saying, okay, because they didn't have that before, there was this uncertainty because he wasn't consistent in responding to her. She was coming from a place of neediness all the time. And so this whole thing was so simply fixed by just having a communication. So we're talking about when they should and why they don't. When you're in a relationship, because we are going to talk about that piece too, when someone doesn't call you back or text you back when you think they're going to, are you assuming they were going to, first of all? And secondly, did you have any sort of agreement in place?
Yeah.
Like if your partner's traveling all the time, and you've got this agreement saying, when they land or when they arrive, they'll make sure they text you or call you, let you know they arrive safely. That's wonderful. But if they miss one, that could be a cause for concern. So having a structure in place that work for you is good.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that presupposes you have an agreement in place, because part of this topic about when they should call and when they don't is not based upon an agreement that's in place. It's based on assumptions and internal agreements you didn't make the other person.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure we get that on the table, because that's a piece that people go, but they should call me back. It's like, but did you talk to them first? Did they plan on calling you back? Did they promise they'll call you back?
Mm-hmm. Do you have an agreement? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I thought, that's going to be such an important part to talk about when we have our second segment, because first, what we talked about is if it's brand new and you've just gone out one time or two times, and we have an assumption that they should call and they don't. If it's really early in the beginning, that's not a very helpful or healthy assumption, because you have no agreement. They're not doing something. They're not doing something they knew they were supposed to do.
Right.
The truth. And I tell women all the time, it's not fair to get mad at a man for not doing something you didn't say. It's really important for you to do this for me.
Right.
So I'm okay with you going, oh, darn, I liked him. I really wish he had written. Gosh, I wish he'd called. I guess it's not going to work out. Let's move on. It's really a challenge. Oh my gosh, life is so much better if you do that. So much better. So we really work on that. I tell them, I'm like Jiminy Cricket. I sit on their shoulders. If we're in between phone calls, this is the self-talk they need to do. Or they text me and go, what was it I'm supposed to say to myself because he didn't call? And oh my gosh, they feel so much better, because you truly have no control over that other person. And you don't want somebody pretending that they like you if they don't. I mean, you really don't want that. You really want somebody that's into you, like that movie. And so that came up on my Zoom thing on Monday too, is they said, if we're not into you, we're not going to call. And then there were cases about that too. And I said, well, to the women, I said, but aren't there times when you aren't into somebody and you don't want to call? And there were certainly some that say they always call. They always call or text and say thanks, but no thanks.
Right.
But there were a couple, including me, who said, there's been a couple times when I didn't respond because I wasn't interested.
Right.
So, oh, well, gosh, if it's good for the goose, then it might be okay. Right?
Exactly.
I love how they always go, it's so different, but it's really not.
No. But this is the piece, though. Again, is like that first few dates where you don't get a call back from them. The assumption of an agreement that's not there is the biggest mistake we make.
Yeah.
You know, if you violate an agreement that you did have in place, that's one thing. But when you say, you know, they should have called me, it's like, they should have. Did they tell you they're going to call you?
Yeah. Maybe
it's time to get a reality check, because that's the biggest piece of this for all people, is they don't really know that they're not living in reality. They're living in this fantasy where they can think it and the person should respond to them. It's like, give them some slack, please.
Well, and that is also across the board kind of a challenge for us women who think you men have this superpower that you can read our minds.
Yeah, because unfortunately, women think that men are just hairy women, as Alison Armstrong says.
Yeah, with more muscles and hair on their body. And of course, you can read our minds. And of course, you know that for every time you've seen us, you should call.
Right.
Yeah, no. It just sets us, everybody up for a failure.
We are different for a reason. And there's differences that are really annoying and differences that are really great.
Celebrate the differences that are really positive. Yes. So Cece, the poobah producer that's in charge of us, says it's time for a break. And then we'll come back and we'll talk about how to get them to call in the times that you really would like them to.
Yeah, set things up for a win.
Yeah. We'll be right back.
See you soon.
Hi there. Back to talking about, let's talk about dating.
Yes.
And when they should call and why they don't. Yeah. Because their feelings hurt and we get discouraged and we think, oh, I don't want to date anymore because it's too painful. And it's so not a really appropriate reason to stop dating because somebody you met briefly stopped calling.
The thing I keep coming back to is that we have dominion over how we feel, but we abandon ourselves in that place so many times. Having that 12-year-old running emotions we said earlier is one of those things we get into because we then, because the thing is we're dealing with something that's more important to us emotionally than most other things, because money's not necessarily as important emotionally as love is, or work or other things. So having that part opening up, especially if we haven't done any work to empower, inspire, or heal that part, can be very tender. So that challenge we have, or that risk we have to be exposing ourselves emotionally and being vulnerable to somebody else, I suggest should be saved at least till the third date. Because some people fall in love so quickly with the chemistry, they're like right from the get-go, which is one of the biggest challenges we have. It's like you go, okay, first date, oh, it's everyone I want, and so they should call and they should text right away. And then by the date 2, you're going, what was I thinking? I mean, and just to be transparent, I've had that experience in a couple of times where I met somebody online and like, wow, this person's amazing. We went out once, even twice, and like going, this person's okay. But by the third day, I'm going, what did I actually see? Because I don't think this is the person I thought I saw. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's worth both ways, obviously. Women have the same thing with men too.
Oh, yeah, I've had that.
But that's the thing, is recognizing that hopefully it's gotten me clear. Is like the clue is to be less attached and less invested, which means that when they don't call, or they don't call when they said they're going to call, it doesn't impact me so much. Right. Because that's the reason why it's such a upset, because we get invested emotionally in something that isn't necessarily there yet. No. And then we get upset because they didn't call when they didn't say they were going to call. Literally, they didn't tell us, and they didn't. It's like the logical dysfunction of that is very amusing, but also very troubling.
It's funny when it's not happening to you.
Right.
It's very amusing to talk about, and it hurts a lot when it happens to you. And it's such a good point to think about the momentum of a pendulum, that it's hanging there in the middle. And if you, however far you pull it over to this side and you let it go, it's going to go just as far to the other side. So that's why I say you need to really consider whether or not this person deserves you having more emotion about them. Have they earned that right yet?
Yeah.
And they could be a wonderful person. You just don't know that yet. So that's why I tell both men and women, you need to keep your emotions to a 0, not about them as a person, but whether or not you're going to care about them. You're going to give them access to your emotions, access to your heart until you've met them. Mm-hmm. And then you're allowed, after you've met them, to be a 1. Because we want to go to a 35 because they're so cute and their voice is so fun and their body's so wonderful. And it's just human nature to want to go pull that pendulum really far. And the problem with that is the hurt now is available just as far.
Right.
And they could do nothing but just be themselves, which isn't really who we want, or we're being ourselves and it's not who they want. And then the slamming of this huge emotion that you're going to have when you don't really know the person well is why people get discouraged and want to stop dating and think dating's horrible. Because often I'll ask people, well, how many people have you gone out? 2. And it was awful. So I'm never doing it again. And how many times did you go out with them? Twice. Yeah. Saying never after twice, it's because you allowed your emotions to get ahead of you.
Well, it is that, and it's also getting your hopes up so high without any structure underneath them. Same idea.
Yes. It's like climbing on this bridge without the structure in it. Would you do that? Would you go drive on a bridge that the structure wasn't built underneath? No. I listen to Dr. Laura all the time, and she says, it's like jumping in a pool and just expecting the other person's going to put water in it. I'm like, I'm going to be checking that there's water and it's a temperature I like and it's deep enough.
before you jump. Yeah.
Yes. And so I put it that way sometimes when people are dating. I go, think of it as a pool. Big, huge cement, hard surface pool. You want to make sure all the right stuff's there. There's a lot of water, and it's, clean water, and it's the right temperature for you. And you haven't done that yet with this person. And what I found for me was when I learned to do this was another one of those big shifts. I was so much more relaxed on dates. I was so much more relaxed at first meetings going, what am I going to learn about me? And what am I going to learn about them? And not, oh my God, is this the one? And I never have to date again. Because that's too much pressure.
Oh God, is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's yeah. I'm just reflecting on a few recent dates I've been on, and just aware of the dance that was going on. Yeah. And also where I was totally realizing that I'm still learning this just as much as other people are. I'm not the pro at this. And it's funny because this woman messaged me afterwards and basically I wouldn't say she insulted me, but she didn't get who I was. She started saying, but you should be so good at this because you're a dating coach. I'm like, I'm not a dating coach. I never said I was. I'm a relationship expert because I watch people how they relate to each other. Dating something that I'm pretty good at knowing about because I watch other people do this and we talk about it. But at the same time, I I make many mistakes on my dates just like other people do. So even talking about it, I'm not perfect in this either.
We're human beings having a human experience. And I tell them when I've had people say this sort of similar thing to me, or why am I still single? I haven't been asked that in such a long time, but I got asked that this weekend by this 40-year-old guy. It was so funny. I went to a big party thing. And I said, because I know all the logical, clinical, educated things. And I also have all the self-talk I can do about having my emotions stay closer to the middle. Yeah. And yet I'm still a girl. I'm into all my feelings. How much sleep did I have the night before? Did I eat enough? Am I really just like, wow, I'm so excited about talking to this person that there's always this adjustment going on inside of me. And it's a lot of work. I mean, I tell my clients, I live this. I know it's a lot of work to go and keep your emotions in check. So I said, how nice that you don't have a robot coaching you. I mean, that's my best thing I can say. And how nice you don't have a robot sitting across the table from you at a first meeting, that I'm going to act like a real human being and not a stilted, overeducated, I would never do that kind of, I mean, really, nobody's above it.
I get there's so much of a conversation about, why not so much why you're so single. How can you be single if you know all this stuff?
Yeah, yeah.
Somehow it's impossible to be single. Because I don't know much about relationships. Because, well, first of all, and just to be totally transparent, I am still learning stuff and working things out. But the other part is, and this is the most important piece for me, because of what I learned in this journey, is that my work is my primary focus. And what I do in my work is what drives me. And any relationship I consider has to fit within that, in meaning that I can't coach a partner, first of all. No. Secondly, that if her lifestyle doesn't let me do my work, I can't play there. And thirdly, if I'm with somebody in the work I'm doing, she's going to be basically in the same arena, same conversation. Otherwise, there's nothing. We miss each other. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. I've been on the dates I've been recently. This couple, one of them, I said before, is somebody I've known for a while. We have a lot more common ground. So there's more chance of us having something that works together really well, even though I'm not necessarily feeling romantically drawn to her at this moment. But the other ones are like, yeah, they're fun to dance with, but I know there's nothing there ultimately because it doesn't fit where I am. And that's just honestly speaking from the truth, not from right, wrong, which is better or worse, just that's the truth. And so honoring that for ourselves is like, yes, we are still learning. We are not perfect and we're choosing what we're choosing. And that may be the biggest piece we can talk about being the experts we are. Is we're doing this from choice, not from desperation or from need.
Yes. It makes us more discerning and it gives us permission to go, oh, this is why we're not a match. I really can tell you very educated why we're not a match, even though there's all these other really good things. But this piece is so important. And I have to tell you, I'm not sure if you heard it. Alison Armstrong was interviewed recently by somebody who talks about grief. And so we know that Greg died suddenly in front of her 2 years ago, and she's told him to send her somebody. I have one other person I know who did that. She wrote a whole book about send me someone to her late husband, and she did. He sent her a perfect guy. And so this guy that she's dating, she said, you really need to know you have to be into my work. And he had only known a little bit about it. He went home, he downloaded all the videos, he got all the books.
Smart man.
Really, I said, that was really serious. See, now here's the reason he would call her, because he's so into her. He's so interested in having a continuing relationship with her that he said, you need this? I'll do that. I can do that. Right. So there's where the agreement part starts that we talked about, that we're going to have this part of our conversation. Yes. For either side, but certainly for men. When I talked about how your priority is not to upset us, that is just a millimeter below. How can you make us happy? You're always looking. Yep. Okay, did that make her happy? Oh God, that made her unhappy. I don't know what it was though. She needs to tell me what it is so I don't do that again. But what would make us happy? So when I told my late husband, guaranteed, I mean, my libido's pretty high, but if you specifically knew you were going to want to have sex that night, start texting me during the day. Guaranteed, I'll be showered, poofed and fluffed and perfumed and naked on the bed when you get home. Guaranteed.
There you go.
So he knew if that's what he wanted that night, all he had to do was text me 2 or 3 times during the day, and my little crock pot would start warming up. So when you really want a communication from someone, you want them to text you on their way home. Do you need something from the grocery store? That would make you feel cared about. You want them to text you when they've arrived on an airplane. You want them to just say hello during the day, like the person that said that. And they're like, so this is the whole thing. Women go, well, it doesn't matter if I have to ask. And right. I think he doesn't really mean it if he has to set an alarm. I'm like, okay, I'm going to give you reasons why that isn't the truth, but let's just pretend all of that's the truth. Do you like getting the note? Yeah. Do you like getting the call? Well, then who cares why he's doing it? Because trust me, he's doing it because he wants to make you happy. I look at him going, well, yeah. Women don't. This is the thing. Women don't just know that we don't just know this.
Well, again, as you said at the beginning before the break, earlier on, it's about, it's like that women have an assumption that men know stuff. It's like we do, but not necessarily in the areas you need.
You know lots of stuff.
Yeah, but that's it. But the whole point about it's like, let me just say this from a point of view as men, we are simple beings. As we are, because we're very good at getting things done, we're good at getting results. But the inclusion of everything else isn't on our radar as much, because that's the way we function. Yeah. So ladies, when you are with a man that you want to make sure he calls you or texts you or communicates with you, is let him know he ought to be doing that, because that makes him feel better, because then he knows he's got something to do. I have one of those powers of the smartphone. It has a thing called a calendar in it. You make notes to do things at certain times, and frankly, that's my best gift. And way back when day planners were the thing back in the 80s, I was in a seminar where this guy who's teaching, David Allen, actually does getting things done. He's one of these master teachers about day planners and structure and scheduling and stuff. And someone said to us, like, do you write things down to remember them? He said, no, you write things down to forget them. I'm like, what? He said, when it's down in his day planner, which is actually better with a phone because it actually beeps at you, whereas day planners don't beep at you.
No.
But when you put it down, you don't have to think about it anymore. It clears your head to be able for other stuff. So if you want to build a relationship with somebody and you want to have the communication there, and you do want them to communicate at certain times of the day that works for them as well, be clear about that, or just simply does get back to you after 3 days after the date or whatever that set up is for you. Yeah. You say, I'd love to hear from you, in a couple of days, see how it was, because then you plant the seed. Not saying you must call me or text me in 2 days.
Yes.
I'd love to hear from you in a couple of days, because we both want to sit with what happened. We had a great experience. But I don't want to assume anything just yet. So let's touch base in a couple of days. Would you be willing to, reach out to me or something like that? Or would you be willing to reach out to me?
Yeah.
And then say, yes, like, great. And hopefully the guy's smart enough and lazy enough to put it in his phone. I'm being transparent.
Yeah.
But it's put in his phone. So on Thursday, after the date went on Tuesday, he goes, "Oh, I need to text her."
Yeah.
Because that's the other part, is that to be transparent is that part of this challenge we have as men is oftentimes we're so in the moment doing what's next that if that person wasn't high enough on our priority list, it's not our romantic partner yet.
Yeah.
It was a first date, didn't necessarily work out, and we're busy doing other things. She's out of mind.
Mm-hmm.
So we won't actually reach out because we didn't think about it.
Mm-mm.
So so again, we talked this thing about the beginning about ghosting and other stuff too. If the first date doesn't work out, they don't call you back. It may hurt emotionally, again, because you said about the pendulum swinging. Understanding that the emotional upset you're carrying is in direct proportion only to what you were presuming was going to happen that didn't.
Yeah.
It's nothing to do with them.
No.
So now, if you're in a relationship 6 months and this starts happening, it's another story in time. I'm saying first date.
Yes.
That really, as you said, is like be on the zero, be centered, be neutral. So you're not positive and negative about the person going in, and then afterwards you can start feeling, well, what does that feel like? And respond accordingly. So it really is tying in the level of response from the other person, communication, call, text, whatever it is, in proportion to the amount of emotional investment on both parties.
Yes.
And that's the thing we don't do. We end up going priority on the call, but the emotion isn't there, or more emotion. It's the disparity of that.
And we're not always honest about it. We don't always check in with ourselves about it. Well, how much was I really caring, and really was that appropriate?
Right.
Oh darn, I was caring a little too much. Oh well, not to give yourself a hard time, but to go, oh, that's why I'm so upset. It's not them. It was me getting too far ahead.
Yeah. And that's the danger of those things called assumptions. We presume or assume they're going to do something they don't. And we're like, they should have. It's like, maybe not.
Maybe not.
Maybe I should have not done that.
And the piece I want to add on to when your great advice about be sure to ask for what you want. So then when, as you mentioned, a woman doing it, when the man does it, however he's reminded himself, put a reminder in his phone, he actually does text back, say, thank you.
Exactly. You. Positive reinforcement. Yes.
Yes. Well, and that's very considerate. You asked if he would do something and he did it. I mean, maybe he's going to say you weren't a match. Oh, well, at least he responded when you asked him to. And I think that that's really important. It's a really good habit for women to get into. It's a really good acknowledgement that encourages men to go, oh, right, yeah, I'm going to do this. And she's going to say, thank you. I mean, I love teasing my famous thing about the trash. And they're like, why should I ask him to take out the trash? It's his trash too. And you should never have to ask him. You should just know it's all over the floor. And I go, well, it's not working this way. So try asking him to take it out. Tell him it would make you so happy. You don't have to go out into the horrible, dark, scary trash can anymore. And then you need to say thank you when he comes back. And they're like, oh my God. But I have a client that she brags to everybody that her husband says he is the trash king. She has not touched a trash can in 2 years. Because he gathers them all up. He takes it out. He comes back and he stands there and she goes, thank you so much, hon. I can't believe I never have to take out the trash again.
Yeah.
And he tells all his friends he's the trash king. I know.
Well, the key thing for that for me is about that we really do love rewards.
Yes. Yes. Because you want to make us happy. So you want the reinforcement. Made me happy. Thank you so much. Please do that again. And oh my gosh, because I didn't have to go out and take the trash, I might have energy to have sex with you. I told her to add that a couple of times and he was like, oh, yeah, I'm taking out the trash.
The price is worth every single penny.
Yes. See, we hadn't talked about sex in 2 whole weeks, so I had to bring it in at some point.
Yeah.
Even if it's
do that, yes.
Yes, because he's telling us the end of our 4 hours. Pardon me.
I was going to say, it was the end. The beginning of our talk was about the first talk, making a call, and why they don't call. Now we're finishing with sex. Perfect.
Isn't it? It's really how we like having our conversations.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. But we are certainly going to revisit this subject again because it is has so many layers.
Absolutely.
And it really can cause people to get their feelings hurt and not want to date anymore. And you and I don't want that to happen. We want people to get in happy, healthy, long-term relationships if that's what they want.
Agreed.
And the way to do that is to talk to Barry or I. Oh, a little segue there.
Nicely done. Nicely.
Thank you very much. So the way to get a hold of me is through my website, which is www.theperfectcatch.com. And you click on what's holding you back from love. You are silly today.
There's lots of W's. Sorry. I did miss you, yes.
Oh, thank you. And so click on what's holding you back from love, and we can have a complimentary conversation. You can also send me a private email, Christine@theperfectcatch.com. You can reach me or read about me on social media on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and YouTube and LinkedIn.
I think that's it. Wow.
And Pinterest.
You Pinterest, you already did. I think you got a lot. You did them all.
Did I? Oh, good. Well, you certainly are Mr. Media too. So please tell people how they can reach you, Barry Selby.
So you can definitely go to my newly updated and revised website. It's now looking kind of pretty. I've still got some tweaks to do, but you can definitely visit it, and which is barryselby.com. Finally got the branding switched, and that really is barryselby.com, not the old brand it used to be. I did that last night, so it's been a couple of days switching the thing so it connects. It wasn't working properly. Now it's working. And if you want to find how to work with me, there are, I think I didn't count it, but there's at least a dozen ways you can click on Let's Chat or Let's Get Started or Sign Up Now, all on that one page. Yeah, it's definitely designed that way. So bottom line is, if you want to have a chat, go to our website, click on one of the buttons, it'll take you there, and you can sign up for a chat with me. You can drop me an email, you can message me or email me at barry@barryselby.com. And on social, you can definitely check out my YouTube channel, which has 1,100 videos on it, which is Barry Selby as well. In fact, it's Barry Selby on YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest. On Facebook, it's barryselby.author. And on Instagram, it's The Real Barry Selby. And of course, on Clubhouse, which I'm very busy, it's also Barry Selby. I'm there as well.
Or the Love Doctor.
The Love Doctor, as I'm known. Yes, I have a couple of friends of mine. They love to go the Love Doctor. That comes out a lot.
It has a lot of syllables, doesn't it? Well, always a great conversation. I hope that this has been really helpful to keep your emotions more in check and to understand when it's really not good for you and not appropriate and not helpful to get upset when somebody didn't reach out, and then how to have somebody reach out when you really want them to and have them actually do it. And then you'll say thank you.
Simple steps in healthy relationships. We love giving those out.
Oh, this is when it's really important to be adult about it in the dating arena. Because, when the teenager's around, it's pretty fun. I mean, you can do really fun, super sexy, juicy stuff. Certainly in the beginning, we can't have the teenager ever be in charge. It has to be the grown-up person.
They can be in the back seat initially.
Yeah, we say give them an iPad with like their favorite movie, like Pretty in Pink or something for girls, or whatever. Right. Legally Blonde. Let her stay busy, and then you be in charge. So
to be continued.
Yes. Next week we'll be back 1:00 Pacific, 4:00 Eastern, and all the times in between.
We're seeing you then. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.